and welcome to the Event Bestie, the show that unlocks the magic of event planning by taking you behind and before the scenes. I'm Tanya Hales. In today's episode, I'm talking with 20-year event veteran Adrienne Giroux. Adrienne went from planning wrap parties for the film and TV industry to landing at one of the largest film festivals in the world, to eventually combining all her skills with food to launch Chef in the House. The start of the year is a great time to look at where you've been to figure out where you're going, and that pivots don't have to be as scary as you think. Let's get into it. I'm very excited for this conversation because we have known each other for a very long time and have had many a conversation throughout our illustrious event careers, but not this intentionally. So I'm very excited. So we're going to take it to the beginning. How did we get here? What is your journey into the event planning industry?
Well, I think like most people, I don't think it kind of was a one direct route. It was kind of a little circuitous. So I went to school for university, went to Concordia for film and television. And I did my last year abroad over in England. And I managed to work there for a few years. And I tried to break into the film and television industry through catering. So I actually did on-set catering, which was my way to kind of at least get a foot in the door. Did that for a while. I worked on some big movies, which was fun. Gladiator being one of them,
Oh,
which
what?
was kind of, yeah.
I knew that. What?
Yep. Russell Crowe in his prime.
Wow. That's so
Anyway,
cool. Very nice.
yeah. So that was a cool little milestone in my little early career. Anyway, fast forward a few years, I moved back to Canada because I stayed in England for 4 years post-university, working in film and television, came back to Canada just after 9/11 and was trying to get work. My sister worked in the industry, but I was told that unfortunately all the years that I had just done, like the credits wouldn't count and I was going to kind of have to start at the beginning. And I was like, well, no, I didn't want to go all the way backwards.
Yeah.
So anyway, I took a few jobs just because I had to, but eventually found out that it was not going to be a long, that wasn't what I wanted to do as a career. So I had a friend who was like, oh, I know someone who's going on mat leave. There's a 1-year contract position at this company called Krista Slack and Associates, and they do events. And I was like, what does that mean? And, didn't know that was a thing, and went and got the job. And so that was kind of really where my event career started. So literally not knowing that events kind of was a career option, I kind of fell into it a little bit. But I think it was such a blessing. It really allowed me to take all the skills that I had learned in film and television, which is just planning and organizing and connecting with people and making shoots happen and,
Right.
getting stuff and the stuff that you need. And
Right.
so I kind of took that over into my first job. And that's when the light bulb kind of went off and, had this aha moment where this could be something for me. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think what I really appreciated the most, and I guess, the question that I think you might ask next is when you knew this was the it for me was we were doing, so Krista Slack had some great clients, one of which was the Molson Indy. So one of the first events that I went to was the Molson Indy VIP party at Liberty Grand. So we were organizing that. So I'd been doing all this stuff in the background and, they wanted me to find some entertainment. And so I did all this research and, they wanted something different and unique. And I proposed like having gymnasts, like rhythmic gymnastics gymnasts come in and do some kind of live work.
Mhm.
And, I just saw everything from, the outreach to them getting costumes to them being at the event and doing their thing. And I think I just had this like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like
Wow.
to see your work go from that full planning stage to execution.
Mhm.
And I think that was really the moment for me where I was like, oh, this is great. I like this. I like seeing a creative hint come through and then you can just see it kind of all come together in the moment live, which was amazing.
Yeah, I think that is the magic of events is, it's kind of similar to being pregnant. Like, right? Like it's a finite time first and foremost. Usually, some babies are just like, "Hey," but it's a finite time. You got to plan and prep for it, but you can only plan and prep so long. It's going to go in the direction that you wanted to go in. But at the end, you have this beautiful product that you're like, wow, I did that. I made that. I created that from an idea or from scratch. Like, I think that that is ultimately, the beauty of events and why so many, I think, follow this trajectory. Like we fall into this industry. It's not generally speaking planned out. Like I went to school for it and now I do it. Like it's for a certain generation at the very least.
Yes, I would
Right.
say certainly now it's amazing how many people, I have a friend who's a professor at Humber for event management, and it is amazing how many students are going there specifically because they want that as a career. Um, so, which is amazing. But
Yes.
like I said, 25 years ago,
Yeah.
this wasn't something that you were
No.
like, oh, aha, there's school for this. So, yeah, so it was a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
1000%. So you're doing these live events, you have Molson Indie, etc. So once you realize, okay, this is cool, this is something I can do, there's a lot of synergies between the film and TV industry and the event industry. So did you set early goals like, okay, these are the types of events I want to do, or this is where I want to take my career, or like any kind of thoughts like I'm gonna be the VP of events for Molson Indie one day, or but on the whole thing, the kit and caboodle, as they say.
Well, I was really fortunate with Krista Slack and Associates to see some really amazing events, like the big live award shows, but also some really cool special events. And we did a lot of in store stuff for Holt Renfrew, which was cool. So I got to see a wide variety of things. And of course, at the time, I was young and eager to learn. And so, picking up those Biz Bash magazines and, or seeing things that were in Toronto. And for me, at the time, Fashion Cares was really something that I wanted to work on because, at that time, it was the biggest fundraising event in the city, but it was
Mhm.
also the biggest most notable event in the city
Mm,
because celebrities were going and they always had amazing hot, headliner acts. And it was, in the fashion world. And when I was a kid, I always thought I would be a fashion designer. So I had this kind of like, ooh, like fashion and events and live production and wow, wouldn't that be cool?
mhm,
And Krista Slack herself did call the show for Fashion Cares for many years, which was how I kind of learned about it. But when I was working with her, I was never involved with it. So it was kind of like, ooh, that would be kind of really cool to
mhm,
do. So after my contract ended with Krista Slack, I kind of branched out on my own. I think that's where my entrepreneurial spirit kind of sparked. So I made a go of it, and I tried honestly for a couple years. But I was trying to do something in the arts and cultural community, which, as we can find out, sometimes doesn't have huge budgets for things.
yes.
So, while I was trying to make a go of it, I was also daydreaming of like, wouldn't it be cool if I could work on something like Fashion Cares? And then kind of, I don't remember how it happened, but there was a job opportunity to work at the AIDS Committee of Toronto, which is the organization that benefits from Fashion Cares and helps to organize it. So I applied and got that job. And so that was kind of dream number one that came true, which I was
Mm,
very fortunate about, was to work at the organization. And, Fashion Cares is basically run by a committee of volunteers. Like there's core staff members that are helping, to manage the event but everything like that event, which I didn't know was literally
mhm,
planned by volunteers, hundreds and hundreds of hours of planning,
yes.
so and I'm very thankful for that experience because I'm still friends with a lot of people from that committee to this
Mm,
day. They
oh.
just we worked hard. There was long hours. But again, to see that event come to fruition was really cool. I mean, I got to meet Katy Perry before Katy Perry was a household name because she
Mm.
headlined the last Fashion Cares. And so that was kind of, again, just one of those moments that you're like, what's happening right now?
I think that's usually when people are just like, "Oh, have you, worked with celebrities and famous people?" And you're like, "Yes." In your mind, you're very much like, "WTF is my life."
Yeah.
But outwardly, you're just like, "Can I get you some water? Do you need anything?" Right? Because you gotta act like you've been there before and that you have a purpose. Because you do. But always in my mind, I'm always just like, this is where the universe has put me? That's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, and I mean, it's and that's where events in film and television do have a lot of similarities because,
Mhm.
in film and TV, you're put into these make-believe worlds that look real, and it's really amazing. And I think that we do the same thing in event production, right? Like
Mm.
the whole idea is that if you have a theme, if you have something that you're looking to do, you got to try and make it look and feel that way.
Yeah.
So you are creating this world of make believe to some extent, but you're tying in all the themes from the visuals and the food and the florals, and you're trying to make this theme look cohesive in terms of what you're putting together, which is that part is something for events that I've always loved is having that having the creative brainchild, and then like you said, it's coming like or it's bringing it to life, and that part is quite magical.
For
I think
sure.
that's what gets you hooked.
It really does. I like so many people, I mean, like myself, I'm just like, "Ah, I'm done. I'm retired from events." And then I launch a whole like event planning podcast. And then I
Yeah.
go and I'm just like, "I could have planned this event better." I was at an event and I like moved the stanchion because how they had the stand like it just didn't make any sense at registration. And my friend was like, you can't do that, Tanya." And I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh, yeah, they're
but
right. Sorry." But also not sorry.
correct, right? Like it's kind of in your DNA to want to help make
Yes.
it more effective, efficient, whatever.
Please help me. Let me help you, but also be a guest, Tanya. Just be a
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so we've covered your beginnings and the
Yeah.
beginnings of, what and how someone could become part of this industry. Let's move to the middle area. So now you're at ACT, and I think that's where we met because ACT also did
Well, that's
that.
right, because that's with Brian King.
Yes.
So with a la carte, who was our catering partner, and he was on the steering committee with Barbara Herschenhorn. So there were some huge heavy hitters that were on
Yeah.
our steering committee that were like industry icons, and so that's kind of how I got to learn about what else was happening in the city and all these, amazing players and amazing people that are doing like all the big events.
Yeah.
So through Brian getting to know Barbara, and coincidentally, as I was still working in film here, I would do contracts with the Toronto International Film Festival. Like I would work during festival, during front of house or their VIP media whatever. Like I just
Mhm.
had, I had a 10-day contract, and so, you know, Party Barbara, as she's known, was always the one doing the opening and closing night parties. And so I was like, oh man, that'd be such a cool job. Like that'd be really cool. So that was kind of always in the little back of my head. And so meeting Barbara at Fashion Cares was quite amazing, like
Mhm.
a bit of a starstruck moment of like, oh wow, she's like legend. Um,
I think, like, that's the thing too, like, the event industry has its titans and its giants, and, like, when you're known by just, like people know your last name, but, like, you're known as, like, Party Barbara, and, like, I'll never forget when she used this, like, "I don't have a website," like, I don't need to have one, and I think
yeah,
she had a card, maybe? Like, she didn't need any of those things, her name literally preceded her, and so, yeah, meeting her was very much like that's like the Beyonce of events in Toronto. Like, I totally understand, and she's so diminutive, but don't let her actual physical stature fool you, and, yeah, so that's definitely I totally feel you on meeting Party
yeah.
Barbara for sure. So is that was your way in?
Mm, yes and no, probably not.
Oh, okay. So
Um,
you're at
so
Axe
I'm at
and you're
ACT.
doing fashion
You and I
cares.
met, got
Yes.
to work on fashion cares, and then of course I did the AIDS walk and Snap, which was their photography fundraising event. And after 4 years, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for a change. And what would that look like? And of course, I always went back to some extent of my love of film. Uh, you know, I would still love going to the movies. It was a good way to, escape.
Yes.
Although similarly, sometimes when I watch a movie, I'm like, how did they get that shot? Where were people hiding them? Anyway. Um, So I was thinking it was probably time to leave. I had done 3 years of working at ACT doing their signature fundraising events and exhaustion can somewhat sometimes set in and just wanting a change of scene. And
Mhm.
so there was a job for at the Toronto International Film Festival that came up because at the time they were building Tickbell Lightbox. So I went in for a job. It was a totally new role because they were looking to build their event production team to be there for when the building was going to open. So this was back in like this, I guess, winter of 2010, maybe. So I went in for a couple of interviews and was very fortunate to get the job, which that to me was the second golden ticket. Like I just totally lucked out because it wasn't like I set these goals, but they were just
Mm,
like they were kind of like maybe I was manifesting them somewhere in the back of my brain, who
probably.
knows? But, I think it was a good match because I had film and television background in terms of what I'd done, but also all these events. And so, I was very fortunate to be one of the first two people hired on the event production team for TIFF.
Nice.
Um, and it was subsequent to that when our team grew and I got to be part of the hiring process and building our team and creating everything that we were doing basically from scratch because
Yes.
TIFF was going from a 10-day festival to operating a building 365 days a year. We were starting
Yeah.
everything from ground zero, basically, which also was exciting. It was another way of kind of creating this new entity that was going to be happening and where we could take
Mhm.
it. So that part was really exciting. I think I've always just liked seeing that spark of imagination come to fruition. So this was just
Mhm.
another opportunity to do that. And then I was even more fortunate because as our team grew and we were doing more things internally, I to some extent became the party Barbara
Did.
because we eventually took on all the responsibilities of doing all of our internal events. So, the first year that I did the opening night party, which I think was 2013, it was a milestone for me. Like for sure,
Mhm.
that was like goal in life check. Like
Right.
I was, really, really it was one time in my life where I could honestly say I was really proud of myself to be like,
Mhm.
cool. Like, this was amazing. And look what I did. And I was 3 months pregnant at the time and I was exhausted.
Oh, that's an extra plot twist. So just for context, because
Yeah,
I got listeners around the world
of
apparently.
course.
The reason why this is a really big deal is because the Oscars, it's one night, but a festival is 10 days. But it's splashiest, most high profile, all of the eyeballs, all of the celebrities, all the dignitaries, all the sponsors, all the people want to know what the opening night movie is going to be. And therefore, that denotes what the star power is going to be at that particular party. And then, like, be at that party because it is the party of all the parties of the festival. And, it sets the tone. And now I think it was starting to be around the time that you joined, but now, like, TIFF, its opening movie means a lot in the general speak of the world. It's one of the top 5 festivals in the world. A lot of
Yeah.
its people's choice go on to win Oscars. Like, it is now really important. I think it always was, but I think, like, the era that you joined it became that much more important in the film and TV industry. It wasn't just like, oh, Toronto's a cute place to like go to. Now it's a destination that you need to be at. So it is a really, really big deal to be a part of the opening night. And so yeah, I'm super proud of you because I know, watching that get built and being able to work with you as a hospitality partner at the time, uh, we it's there's there's a lot, and I think people see the glitz and the glamour, but they don't know how much work something like
Yes.
that is for sure.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. And especially when you're the first year I did it, we were offsite at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, like kind of took over the whole complex, which was, a huge challenge and endeavor in and of itself to be
Yes.
using real sports, 11, the outside, like it was massive. Worked with a really great team at MLSE to do that. But then the subsequent years, it came into the building at Tiff Bell Lightbox, and I would have to be at the helm, essentially producing the biggest event that we were going to have in the building with 2,500 people coming through the doors in one night.
Mhm.
Um, working with all of the departments. So security, ticketing, front of house, concessions, O&B from a catering side, and also our other hospitality partners that were so generous because, again, maybe not a lot of people know this, TIFF as an organization is a not-for-profit. So, all the work that we would do would not have been able to get done without the support of our hospitality partners and our vendors who were generous with giving us charitable discounts and stuff. So, you really had to work with those relationships.
Mhm.
Um, and like internally and externally
Yeah.
to kind of make sure that it could work like a well-oiled machine, and so to be that point person kind of leading the charge with all of these department heads was a big responsibility, but
Mhm.
I think year after year we crushed it, which was always nice.
Did
So
can confirm, did do the crushing. That's such a beautiful I think, um when it's when you get into it, when you're finally like, "Okay, I'm in it, this is my career," you kinda wanna plan your career to a certain extent, and then you
can't
realize you
help it.
can't. Right, it's literally, like you said, it's in our DNA to try and corral and want to like, "Okay, next step and go here," but, I think what the beauty of this entire story so far is you cannot you can plant the seeds, right? Like, you having those 10-day contracts, you know, endeavored yourself obviously to the organization, right? But you managed to pivot several times. Like, you were in events across the ocean, the pond, as they say, and then, you came back and, "Oh, that's not gonna be a thing, I gotta pivot." And being open to opportunities, I think is, also really a key point in your story so far. Is it's like you were because you use the word fortunate, and I feel like women do this a lot. Where just like I was lucky too, or I was fortunate too. I'm just like, no, you planted the seeds and you worked for it,
No,
and
it's true.
whether you didn't outwardly manifest, like you did have goals, right? You
Yes.
went to school for film and TV. You wanted to work in film and TV. You did it. You just, not on the sets, but still technically, yes, on the sets, but now the sets were coming to your house.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, and certainly in the early part of my career, as I was trying to get myself established, I did a lot of volunteer work because
Mhm.
I was just trying to meet other people, the other people in events, So I volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. I did a lot of like, I would try to find charities that I had that resonated with me and then work on their special fundraising events to, lend some support. I think part of because of the work that I saw other individuals do for the organizations that I worked for, but it was a great way to kind of even just get things kind of started and meet people along the way. And I often say that to people who are just starting out, like, volunteer at organizations to meet other like-minded people or other people in your kind of where you want to go and what you
Yep.
want to do and give yourself opportunities that way also, I think is important.
Yeah, 1000%. So what were some of your in that era, do you have any standout event moments?
Movements. There's two that stand out. So there was the year that I did the TIFF Kids opening night party. And like TIFF Kids is for teenagers, right? And I was far from it being a teenager. I was like, I don't know what's cool. Like but we for the first time we held the party in the loading dock. And as I was, so the kids went into cinema to watch a movie and then they came down into the loading dock. And I just heard some kids like have this, oh, wow, this is so cool. And I was like, yeah, we did it.
Wait, hold on a second. No, we gotta back up for a second. In the loading dock?
Yeah, we
No,
had,
I'm
because it was a smaller
sorry.
party. So yeah, we had the band on oh, like on no, I can't remember the name of this. Like,
That like
yeah, we
riser
had the
that
band. Yes,
the risery thing that goes up and
yes,
down?
yes,
What?
the lift.
Okay.
Like we had the band on the lift, and we had food stations, and we had bean bags. And we kind of like we just made it feel like a rec room. And I mean, it was a loading dock, so it really fit the bill. And it was just, and we had the loading dock doors open, and like it was just a cool vibe. It was really interesting and unique, and I think for the kids who got to like take this cool route through the building to get to the loading dock gave it
Right.
kind of this really interesting, wild experience.
That's
So
so fire. I
yeah.
love that so much, especially since knowing that again, like the pathway, like that's not a place that people go, right? Or see. So they were getting like the technically the super VIP treatment because
Yeah, exactly.
that's truly where the Beyoncés of the world do walk through
That is
is
true. They
those
walk
same
through
hallways.
them. That's right. That's
That's
right.
so cool. That's I love
So
that.
that was a good moment. I'd say my second one, which I really loved, was so another event that I spearheaded with a colleague was Boombox, which was TIFF's signature fundraising event. Like TIFF never had one, and their philanthropy department were like, well, we should have a fundraising event because we're not for profit and we have this building. And so my colleague and I were kind of the two that basically spearheaded this. Like she had the initiative, but she came to me as the event lead, and we
Mhm.
kind of, got to artistically produce these events together. And man, they were cool. Like, I mean, it was voted number one from Best in Toronto for a couple of years. Like it was a really fun event. And
Yeah.
I remember one year, I think it was the Warhol event, we were gonna do like a moment where we were gonna do a confetti cannon at midnight over the dance floor. And there was a lot of anticipation and there was a lot of red tape I had to go through, like security and the cleaners, and everyone was like, we really want to do like
The
a
poor
confetti
cleaners.
cannon in the building. And we're like, yes, we do. And I think the reason why this memory is so stuck is because someone actually took a picture and captured it of me at the moment when the confetti cannon went off, and like my hands are in the air because I think I caught the eyes of my colleague that I was doing these events with on
Uh,
the dance floor, and it was just like this moment of like, yes, like how awesome is this? And like, of course, the crowd went wild, and
right.
it was just like it was just one of those exciting moments that you get to do in this crazy world of events that we live in.
Good surprise and delight because
Yeah.
honestly, like I feel like events, especially, I call them like social corporate, where there's always a social component to it, whether it's like be on socials or it's very, socially based, but it's still put on by a corporation and or corporate sponsor it. Um, we're really children, right? Like just feed
Want to be
us.
amused.
Right, we wanna be amused, we wanna be entertained, and, and for people, especially, that type of event where people who have been going to events for years and they're very jaded and they're very much like, I've been there, I've seen it all, I've done it all, I've heard it all, like, you can't impress me," and when you do, it's kind of like, yeah, you're
Yeah.
still a child inside and I still got you. Trick or treat. Like I think that that's one of those moments too where you're just like, okay, like I know what I'm doing and yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I mean, that was a tough building to activate because it was so big and like literally champagne taste on a beer budget, you know?
Oh, I remember.
You know all too well. You know all too well. So yeah, I mean that was always a big challenge of like, well, how can we make such a big impact in such a large space
Mhm.
with no money?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that was hard sometimes, but we always managed to do it, which was amazing. And I mean, I have to really credit my team. Like I worked with an amazing group of young women who just, you could be like, as someone who eventually kind of built up her career there and became, a senior manager, like I really needed my team to step up and do a lot of the work. If there was one
Mhm.
thing that I learned at TIFF, which I think was such a great takeaway from a career perspective, was how to delegate.
Mm.
As planners, we tend to want to like, oh, no one can do it better than me.
Right.
And I just don't think that it can't be the case all the time.
No. And it is not. 1000%.
Time and a place, but not all the time and not for something as big as that. And so I really needed to learn how to let go, which was great. But I also had such trust and faith in my team that they could execute. And, you know, the vision was mine, but I gave them the opportunity to execute on the vision.
Mhm.
And like they nailed it every single time. And I'm just so grateful for all of them. Like, not even just people on my team, like the technical production side with the
Mhm.
lighting and how the building would become animated. Like, it was a collective effort for
Mhm.
sure. But I think, I'm actually getting goosebumps because
Mm.
I just, it was a part of TIFF that I loved the most was
Yeah,
like that collaboration and that teamwork that we got to do these amazing things together. Like, it wasn't just about me.
for sure.
It was about all of us. And we all succeeded as a result of that and working together tirelessly, like
Listen, I've
yeah.
heard about, especially during festival, like, the sleeping at the office and just not
Yes.
not
Yeah,
going anywhere
bringing
because
your clothes, bringing your set of clothes for the 10 days because you don't have time to go home, you don't have time to eat, you don't have time to do anything, and, like, you know, you're working 18-hour days plus for 10 days straight, it's a lot, and, to have opening night be the first night was always pretty epic because,
yes.
you'd be there until 4 o'clock in the morning, getting the building reset for movies to happen in that
Yes.
space the next day,
'Cause
so,
the other F
you know
is film.
Yes,
So,
that's right. So, I mean, like, yeah, it couldn't have been done without the amazing teammates that I had, and they were just fantastic, and I'm grateful that I'm, still connected to a lot of them to this day. So, yeah,
it's
it was an amazing experience for
that's
sure.
beautiful. Alright, part 3.
Yeah.
Where we're at now. I say the future, but, because we started at the beginning and then we did the middle, the future, the present, whatever, it's a hybrid. Um, so where do you go after TIFF? What happens to Adrienne when she's just like, "I'm TIFFed out," which is probably a thing that people just
Yes.
get TIFFed out.
Yes. Tiffed out. And life took a different direction. And then the pandemic hit in March of 2020.
Yep.
And so at the time, I was left with an opportunity. I like to see it as an opportunity to reimagine my career and what I wanted to do at that point. Um, my daughter at that point was 6 years old. So doing online learning for senior kindergarten was not a thing.
No,
So I feel like I always try to find the silver lining. So it was a good opportunity for me to have been home at that point, and it was a good opportunity for me to be able to be like, okay, well, what do I want to do next? Event planning was always something that I wanted, like, that I loved to do, but I
mhm,
also knew that, like, I couldn't imagine where to go to next. And I was like, and, because in my 10 years at TIP, not only did I do event planning, I did event sales, and then I did corporate partnerships for a year. So I had multiple careers within that 10-year time frame.
Hmm.
And I didn't know, to be honest, where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. But my business mentor was always like, you're meant to be your own boss. And I'm like, you're probably right. I think I've worked long and hard enough for other people. I think maybe I'm wanting to try to do something for myself again.
Hmm.
And so during the pandemic, I, was thinking about what that would look like, and it, I don't know if it was nostalgia or having conversations with my mom. And so when I was a child, I lived in Paris for 3 years, and my parents would always host these chef-led dinners. And I was like, oh, that's, I was like, I wonder if there's something like that exists here. So, did the research. And while there's a lot of people that do private, like a lot of chefs that do private chefs, they'll come to your home.
Hmm.
They're either a personal chef or a private chef. I couldn't see anything where they were doing like chef-led dinners in your home. You could go to do like a cooking demonstrate, like a cooking school to take a cooking class or course or
Right.
whatnot, but nothing that came into the home. And so I was like, can I take this concept and make something of it? And I just decided to go for it. Never, never one to try and, say no to a challenge. So yeah, I mean, I just was like, okay, this is what I think I want to do. And I got help with my business mentor to, what's the brand going to look like? What is this, how is this all going to take shape? And I was very fortunate. Again, one of the things that I have really appreciated with my time at TIFF is having met some amazing people, yourself being one of them, obviously, but also others
Thanks.
in the hospitality industry that
Hmm.
were partners of mine. Because the other thing that I did was managing all of our hospitality partners. So, you know, just 30
That's
relationships
a lot.
managed with hotels and caterers and
Hmm.
restaurants. And so I was fairly lucky that I had some good connections and relationships with people in the hospitality world. So, as I was trying to build the brand, I reached out to several of them to see if they thought it would be an idea and something that, would this chef-led in-home, dining experience be a thing? And some of them were like, yeah, sometimes we do that. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, would you want to give it a go with me? So that's kind of where Chef in the House was born.
Mm.
It was just born out of this idea of like these very nostalgic, happy memories of a child and, my parents having these evenings and like, maybe this is where my event planning kind of spark was, like I'd write out the name
Yes.
tags and I'd set the table and I would light the candles and
1000%. Yes. That is your, I won't say villain origin story, but that is your Roman Empire. That exact moment, ma'am.
yeah. Yeah.
1000%.
And I love that. I loved helping my mom doing that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And, look, and we benefited from it. At the end of the day, they became really great home cooks because they were learning all these amazing tips and tricks by all these chefs coming in and doing this fun stuff. And, I just remember it being like a fun evening. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's kind of where the foundation of Chef in the House kind of came from at a time where I was like, I knew that I had to do something that was involved with events. I knew I wanted to do something that was going to be my own. And, I love food. I think, probably many of our conversations would have been theming food. Like, I
Yes.
loved that. I mean, designing menus for all the events that we've worked
Yes.
on together, or even just myself with other partners, like, that was so much fun. Like
Yes.
working with Jason Bangeter, who's now at Langdon Hall, who was the executive chef at O&B. Like we would sit down and have these amazing meetings and like really come into some crazy ideas of what to do with the menu. And you're like, are people really gonna know like what this is all about? Because there's such an underlying like layer to it. But
Mhm.
that was part of it that I loved. I just
Yes.
loved coming up with those unique food ideas that would just blow people's minds. And, you hear the mms and oh my God, this is so good. Like, I love that. And so I wanted with Chef in the House to have those moments, but in the comfort of your home.
Mhm.
So and I think in the short time since I launched in January of 2021 that I've been able to accomplish that also. Like, we do really well with small events in your home, but I've also done some corporate events also. And, like food is such an integral part to an event. Like,
Yes.
let's not, and I've heard some of your other podcasts, and it is true. People will remember the food probably more so than anything
Anything
else.
else?
So, there was if there was one thing I was never going to skimp on, regardless of our budget, it was going to have to be the food in some way, shape, or form. We needed to make sure we fed we fed our guests,
Yes.
and they got a great experience out of it, whatever that looked like. And so that is certainly something that with Chef in the House, it's the chef and the food are the stars of the evening. Like, that's what's happening.
I love that.
So, and I think people are really into that right now. Like, I think people just really want to have that connection through food, the connection with just having some kind of meaningful moments, be it for a special occasion or even just like a night in with friends.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's how I kind of really took a major pivot, and that's where we are today.
What I love about that too is, I mean, the writing was on the wall. There was a point where we were only allowed to do things in our house with our bubbles. And, January 2021, I think the world was open, but then it reclosed again like months later, and it wasn't really open. It was like partially open. And I'm like, what does that even mean? So
Yeah.
it was a very smart pivot. And I think that you know, you've had so many of those throughout your career, and needing to kind of see the writing on the wall and be like, okay, well, this is not gonna be a thing that I can do. Where you are in your life, right? You mentioned your daughter being 6, right? Like, events is hard as a parent. It's not parent friendly at all. So, okay, you leave TIFF, you could have gone a lot of different places on a lot of different, if the world hadn't closed. Let's just,
Yes.
like, caveat there. Like, the world hadn't closed, whole different story. Chef in the House might not be a thing if the pandemic doesn't happen, but I
Correct.
think, ultimately you would have been able to say, I kind of built Tough by the Lightbox, so I can take any job. But what would that have done? 18-hour days when you're a parent is just not really a thing. Not
No, it's not
possible, so
conducive. It's not conducive.
not at
And
all.
yeah. And so trying to find that, well, what's that happy medium,
Mhm,
I think that's this is certainly providing me that opportunity where I get a little bit more flexibility, can be here for my daughter when she gets home, I get to work
mhm,
from home. But it's still doing the things that I love to do. I love to plan, I love to organize, and I love seeing people happy. Like,
yeah,
I'm a bit of a people pleaser, but I'm also, like, there's nothing more gratifying than when someone says, yes, I had an amazing time or experience, or the food was
mhm,
amazing. Like, those are the things that are the real takeaways for me for my career, and kind of
mhm.
what lights my fire. So,
Last question for you. What advice
mhm.
would you give to those who want to have a long, successful career in the event industry?
Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, I think if you're just coming into the industry, I think you got to realize you got to roll up your sleeves and you got to get in there. Like,
Yep.
this is not a job for the faint of heart. They're long hours and long days, and you need to hump stuff around for the first few years. Like, that is going to be your beginning. So if you're prepared for that, and you're prepared to then move up and be able to become more of a director of whatever that role looks like, then just understand that it's a grind going in,
Mhm,
but and be ready for that. And then I think that's kind of step number one, and like, okay, if you can get through that, then you'll be able to kind of move your way up. um I think more advice would be able to learn how to adapt, I
mhm.
think, and troubleshooting, I think, are the two biggest things that I've learned. Like, you can plan A to Z, triple A to triple Z. And honestly, there is going to be ZA 2.10 coming at you that you didn't even think about, right? Like it's just
Yup.
you just got to be prepared. So I would say if you can think on your feet and adapt and just learn how to troubleshoot the issue at hand and just make it work, so that again it doesn't impact the guest experience. That's something that I think all event planners should become really good at, because it's just going to make your life easier.
What's funny there, I think that is so opposite of what people think about event planning, right?
Yes.
They think that we're all type A personalities who, uh, we love a clipboard and we love a headset. First of all, I hate headsets. They drive me crazy. And I don't use a clipboard. Well, I used to back in the day when everything was on paper. Now I'm just like clipboard. That's crazy. Um, but your best assets as an event planner is your ability to adapt, not
Correct.
your ability to plan.
Yep.
And I think that I'm just like, it's so nice hearing from someone who's been in it this long, to say that, because I think that needs to be heard by people when they
Yeah.
hire us as
Yeah.
planners or when they go into the industry, as planners, producers, managers, coordinators, whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
your ability to plan is is only going to take you so far. What do you do when there's an electrical fire?
Yeah.
Because if you can't figure out real quick where that wedding is gonna be, you have a lot of problems on your hands. True story, by the way.
Yeah. I'm sure no one pulls certain things out of thin air if it hasn't been done before. It hasn't happened.
So, yes, so sorry to interrupt, but that was I needed to say to your particular point about being able to adapt. I'm just like,
Yes.
yes, 1000%.
And then part of that, the other thing kind of secondary to that, which I think is important, is you will be successful. So be nice to your suppliers and your vendors.
Ooh.
That is client relationships when you're an event planner is instrumental to your success,
Yep.
because certain people might like to operate with getting angry or yelling or whatever. I've always found that by pouring honey in someone's ear, you're going to get someone to help you out a lot faster. And so building those client relationships that you have with your vendors is a great way for you to have longevity in the events career, because if people if people respect you and people know that they're going to have a good experience working with you, then they'll want to work with you again
Yep.
because you make it easy. If you
Yes.
make it hard,
Yeah.
you're making it harder for yourself, quite
Just
frankly.
1000%.
So, and as an event planner, the thing is that you have 1,000 different relationships on that front, right? Because every event has a caterer, has a florist, has an AV, team, has, your subcontractors of whatever kind. Like you're
Mhm.
managing a lot of people. So you better be good with people management. Would be my
Yes.
last would
Yeah.
be my last little tidbit, hot tip.
Yes. She said, "Fun facts." I think also too there is like, time is of the essence during an event. You don't have all the time to waste and go back and forth on, "Oh, my spoons were missing." All you need to say is, "Hey, can you put some spoons in a cab for me, please?" And they'll put some spoons in a cab for you. Also true
Yes.
story, right?
Yes.
So, like
Oh,
yelling back and
how many
forth.
times we've had something go into a cab is,
Right.
I
And at the
mean,
end of the day, you can deal with the accounting and who messed up after the event. During, you just need some spoons. And, you know, they will they prioritize putting your spoons in a cab if you're rude? No, they shall not. And they
they
shouldn't.
shall not. Yeah.
So yeah, I think like there's so many other parts and the amount of management of people, like you said, it's not just 'cause everyone's got a boss, whether it's you're an entrepreneur and your boss is your client, or you work in-house and your boss is your boss. Everyone's got a boss. And you got to be able to, okay, where does the buck stop? How do you delegate? How do you lead? Um, if you're chaotic, your event is going to be chaotic.
Yeah.
Like there's no
Yep.
there's no question about it. If people are not clear about the instructions, like where do I go? Where do am I supposed to be? What am I wearing? What's happening? Like why? I remember, I think it was a closing night party at Roy Thompson Hall where it was like a oldie, like British movie, and we were passing the
Oh,
hors
right.
d'oeuvres in a suitcase.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that would not have made sense to anybody if we hadn't explained it's coming from the movie, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, Tiff made it easy. We're just like, just pretend, just know that it came from the movie, right? And then of course I had an old British boss, so he was just like, absolutely, we gotta do it. And I'm like, you're gonna make Simon crazy, which of course that's exactly what happened. But moral of the story is, if you don't explain the context, then they're just like, I'm not doing this, or I don't
Right.
want to carry it, or I can't. Okay, so what do we do for the people who don't want to walk around with a suitcase?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think all those things, those are excellent pieces of advice. I think to anyone who wants to plan an event, and even if they don't want to do it full time, they're just thinking of a one off, like these are the things that you have to think about. Are you prepared to be flexible and adaptable? Are you a good leader of people? How are you under duress? Because you're under
Yes.
duress from basically doors open till doors close.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you gotta be able to, do you get mad? That Snickers commercial? Like, do you get mad when you're hungry because know that you're not eating during the event?
Yeah.
So, can you sustain yourself on 3 orders?
You're right. Well, I mean, now there's like so many other things that I'm thinking about. I'm like, perfectionism, like that used to be me. Like it used to have to be perfect. And the thing is that, you know, sometimes that rule of 80% is good enough. Like, not everyone is going to notice that little tiny thing that's in the corner, like, or whatever. So I
Yeah.
definitely learned that, perfectionism in terms of how, like, if it's still going to shine and it's going to look really good, nothing's going to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Because, maybe some florals didn't turn up because they got forgotten and they didn't get to the event on time and they might have had a key component to something, but oops.
Also, the guests don't know what they don't know.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Unless
Which
the
is
event is called florals, they're not gonna miss the flowers.
That's right. That's right. And but that's an important thing to learn because I
Yeah.
think to go back to the very, very beginning, like, to some extent, a lot of planners are A types and we do want that level of perfection and we want things to look great because we've had it in our brains. It's been from the spark of the idea and we're seeing it execute and you want to see your vision execute in the way that you kind of visualized it.
Right.
But I think that takes a lot of learning and practice to understand that's, with all the troubleshooting, it's not always going to go your way. So
Nope.
you have to be prepared for that.
Adrienne, this
Wild
was
ride.
amazing as I
Thank
knew it
you.
was going to be
Uh,
because and I mean, I've known you for so long and I
I
learned
know.
things about you that I didn't know, which is the whole point of this podcast
I
is
love
to
this
learn
podcast. I
things.
love listening to it. And I'm
Oh,
so thrilled that you invited me to be on. It's wonderful. I'm loving everything that you're doing. It's amazing.
thanks. I really it really is sparking joy. I don't care about the numbers. I know I could promote it better or more or whatever. I just love talking events with I love nerding out with fellow event nerds because it is a very unique thing. I have a friend who also is in film and TV industry, and so on a different side, but so when we talk, like I'm just like, no, I understand your life because there
Yeah.
are so much
The various,
synergies and
yeah,
stressors and producers and directors and cast and crew, like it's all the same thing. Like you said, it's
correct.
creating a whole make believe world for a specific period of time. And for movies, the guests are not until the it gets aired. um for events, it's in real time.
Yes. That's
um
the only big difference.
it's the only difference, but it's so much fun. So thank you so much for joining me, and
My
for the
pleasure.
listeners for listening. I hope you too
Yes.
enjoyed our conversation, and if you like the podcast, hit that subscribe button so I know it's real. And until the next time, I will keep the red carpet ready for you.
Amazing. Thank you.